Hey, so I'm trying to catch up on the compassionate allowance little series I was just trying to put out there with the most recent additions. There was, I think, 12 of them put out in August 2023. I've gotten through a few. My intention was to get through all of them, just so it's out there for anyone who might be, looking up a particular severe condition, not being aware that it is a compassionate allowance and that they could be filing for Social Security disability and having it expedited just like that. This is Charlie, by the way. So I'm having here, I have a little coffee off to the side and I was taking a little break. So he's going to disappear now. Yeah, I know. We'll see if he or she behaves. We kind of think it's a she because she's really loud when she wants to be and bossy. Okay, so the compassionate allowance that was added that we're going over today is cholangiocarcinoma. And I am looking at, and I will put the link down below, but it is also referred to as bile duct adenocarcinoma, bile duct cancer, biliary tract cancer. There's a slew of other names. Perhaps I should go through them. Distal bile duct cancer, distal cholangiocarcinoma, distal extrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, extrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, hepatocholangiocarcinoma, or combined together as one long word, hepatocholangiocarcinoma. Hilar bile duct cancer. Oops, he just went flying. Come here. Oh, sorry about that. Crazy, don't do that. Okay. Intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, perihilar bile duct cancer, and perihilar cholangiocarcinoma. Okay, so the SSA is telling us that it's a cancer that develops in the cells within the thin tubes, the bile ducts that bring the fluid that helps us digest our food, the bile, from the liver. It brings from the liver and the gallbladder to the small intestine. It says that the cancer that occurs within the... Where are you going? Now he's on my head. Can you see him? Cancer that occurs within the bile ducts is categorized as biliary tract cancer, BTC. It can occur in the ducts both inside and outside of the liver. They say because it's a BTC, it is often incorrectly grouped with gallbladder cancers, which are a different kind of BTC. So there's three kinds of cholangiocarcinoma. The extrahepatic or distal version occurs in the portion of the bile duct nearest the small intestine. All right, Charlie, come on. The cancer, see, she's getting lippy. The cancer may be in the bile ducts as they exit the liver or in the bile ducts when they end in the small intestine. And it is the most common kind of bile duct cancer. Then the second type is intrahepatic, and it occurs in the parts of the bile ducts within the liver. And they specifically point out that this type of cancer should not be confused with liver cancer because it's not the same thing. And then lastly, Hilar or Hilar, I'm not sure how to say it, Hilar. This type of cholangiocarcinoma, it's a subset of the extrahepatic, which was the first type we just talked about. And it occurs in hilum, Hilum, the area where the bile ducts and important blood vessels connect with the liver. This is one is also called the perihilar or perihilar cholangiocarcinoma. Okay, it's rare, and as you probably know, a lot of the compassionate allowances are rare, and it seems like they've been putting in compassionate allowance conditions for years and years and years. He's flying again. I know she's on my head. Come on. You're being a pain. You're trying to show off. Stop. At least you can dance to them or something. Sing. Each year, there's only about 8,000 people in the United States that develop this kind of cancer. So that seems like a lot, but in the spiel of things, it's not. And one thing I've noticed is that, as I was saying, that the compassionate allowances, right? Compassionate compassionate allowances, when it's a rarer disorder, you know how they just don't get as much attention because there's not as much perhaps money devoted to them because there's not as much people complaining about them. But in any event, this one finally made it on the list. So that's a good thing. It can occur at any age, but usually it's people older than 50. And Hispanic Americans have a higher risk than the other ethnic groups of developing the cholangiocarcinoma. Okay. They say that it's often diagnosed after it's already become advanced, which makes successful treatment more difficult, obviously. They don't know the cause. We're not doing this again, Charlie. Not doing it again. Sorry, guys. Causes unknown, but there are risk factors that suggest the health conditions that cause chronic long-term inflammation in the bile ducts may play a role in its development. Some factors that may increase the risk include cirrhosis of the liver, primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is inflammation, hardening, and scarring, blocking the bile ducts. Hepatitis B or C infection can be a risk factor. If you have biliary tract stones, and also parasitic infection. I think he just like clawed at my hair, right? Anyway, for the diagnosis, which every compassionate allowance has to be properly diagnosed in the medical records for it to be considered a diagnosed compassionate allowance. So they do that via liver function tests, tumor marker tests, abdominal ultrasounds, magnetic resonance cholangiopancreatography. Whoa, MRCP. I can't believe I got that word out. Cholangiopancreatography. Okay, MRCP. Endoscopic retrograde ERCP, which is, so it's endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography, which is ERCP as opposed to MRCP. One is endoscopic resonance and one's, endoscopic retrograde, and one is magnetic resonance. That's the MR versus the ERCP. And then there's percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography, PCT, or biopsy. So if you have been told you have this or a loved one does, you want to make sure, if you're going to be applying, that it's actually diagnosed. It's not a suspected, condition, but they've actually done this legwork behind it. All right. Unfortunately, you have to just go through those steps. There's also physical findings that are usually evident and may be found, and that's abdominal pain, dark urine, fever, itchy skin, jaundice, which is the yellowing of the skin and whites of the eyes, light colored stool, nausea and vomiting, and unexplained weight loss. When it comes to the diagnosis codes, ICD-9 is 155.1, ICD-10 is C22.1. They talk about the progression of this condition, and they say that the prognosis for people with this condition is usually poor. 5-year survival rate for bile duct cancer that hasn't spread outside of the bile duct is 10% to 15%. And that's if it hasn't spread. And if it has spread, then the rate drops to 2%. So this is really, a terrible and unfortunate condition. My goodness. Okay. They do believe that newer treatments will mean that these rates will improve over time, according to the SSA. So the treatments include, and depend on the location of the cancer and if it has spread. So why don't you just walk around here and just leave me alone. There are surgical treatments such as bile duct removal, and that would be bile duct removal if the cancer has not spread, obviously. Partial hepatectomy, which is partial removal of the bile duct and sections of the liver, A Whipple procedure, which is removal of the bile duct, gallbladder, and part of the pancreas, stomach, and small intestine, liver transplant, and palliative surgery. And because most of these cancers, bile duct cancers, have spread by the time they are diagnosed, which really stinks, the healthcare provider may recommend a combination of multiple treatments, which could include also radiation therapy, chemotherapy, targeted therapy, and immunotherapy, all the things we kind of hear about with cancers in general. So it doesn't sound great, but anyway. So when the SSA is going to be evaluating the condition, they're going to look for the clinical history and the physical examination that describes the diagnostic features of this cancer. They might be looking for biopsy or needle aspiration information that would be found in operative notes, pathology reports, summaries of hospitalization or other medical reports, including details of the surgical and pathological findings, and the results of liver function tests, tumor marker tests, the abdominal ultrasound that we mentioned before, as well as what we mentioned before, the MRCP, ERCP, and PTC testings. If you are diagnosed with it, accordingly, it meets listing 13.19. Okay. And they specifically add again that the prognosis is poor based on a confirmed diagnosis alone. So that's where it comes into a compassionate allowance, because it's not like they have to find out how's she doing with that condition. They already know that if you have the diagnosis, it's really bad already, you know. And therefore, if the response that a patient is having to treatment, let's say they're responding well, that doesn't mean they can't win on a compassionate allowance. Okay. I mean, presumably, if you win on a compassionate allowance and you're one of those 2% or 5% or 10% that survive, awesome. And then you don't need Social Security disability anyway, right? Unless if you have other problems, that would be a different story. So they don't require that you are not doing well with treatment. So therefore, hopefully everyone can fight, and do as much as they can with their treatment. You know, you're going to still get your compassionate allowance. All right. All right. So that's it for that one, guys. Cholangiocarcinoma, not good. All right. Hopefully I'll get to the next ones. I'm sorry I've been so slow. It's been like a month and I only got like 3 or 4 out. But anyway, and say you could say goodbye to Charlie. Yeah. Here, say goodbye. Come here, Charlie. Just say hi. Say hello. Charlie. Let me show him how you can say Charlie. Charlie? He's being shy or she. Like I said, we think he should be she, right? Next time you can meet Harry, which we think is a he, maybe. He's turquoise conure. And then we have little old Lennox. I thought everybody gives him different names around here. My husband calls him Leo. I forget what my daughter calls him, but he's a really old cockatiel. He's really sweet. We adopted him from an elderly gentleman who needed to give him a home. So anyway, all right, everybody, take care. And if you have a compassionate allowance, file right away. And make sure you put those words in your application so it gets snagged as a compassionate allowance, and it'll go much faster. All right, be well.